Somewhere at the edge of the world, surrounded by the turquoise waters of the Pacific, lies an archipelago that has fascinated researchers, travelers, and anthropologists for centuries. The Trobriand Islands, now part of Papua New Guinea, were a place where European ideas about civilization and tribal life did not apply. This is where Bronisław Malinowski discovered a society built on exchange, not of money or gold, but of gifts, obligations, and symbols. A system based on generosity, not greed. That is what fascinated him. The Trobriand people lived by rules that seemed chaotic to Europeans, but in reality they were highly organized. Malinowski wrote about their love, rituals, and traditions, showing a world where relationships were more important than personal wealth. But what if this world had become fully independent? In the 1970s, as colonial empires were collapsing, a young man from the Trobriand Islands believed that his people could create their own future. His name was John Kasaipwalova, the first educated Trobriander, a poet, thinker, and activist. He studied in Australia, where he learned about socialism, Catholic social movements, and the fight for identity in post-colonial nations. He returned home with many ideas, a thick beard, an afro, and a strong belief that his people did not have to rely on Papua New Guinea or Australian officials. For a few years, his movement, Kabisawali, worked like an independent nation. They introduced their own system of trade based on mutual support. They started a bank, bought trucks, built cultural centers, and planned to open a hotel designed like a traditional Trobriand village. There was no place for exploitation because everything was meant to be shared, just like in the past. But history is not kind to dreamers. The Australian authorities shut down their council, the movement collapsed, and Kasaipwalova became an outsider. He continued writing, experimenting with agriculture, and searching for ways to combine tradition with modern life. He was both a socialist and a Catholic, a revolutionary and a poet, a critic of foreign control, but also a man who wanted to connect his culture with the wider world. Today, we will hear his own words. This is an interview recorded 6 months before his death, where he talks about a dream that almost came true, about how the Trobriand version of communism was not just an idea, but a continuation of the traditional way of life, about what it meant to be the first educated person from his island who refused to stay silent. This is the story of a man who, for a moment, lifted his island toward freedom.
To the end of Vietnam War, I had the fortune of being a student in Australia of the university. So at that time, I was introduced to all the student movement in the 60s and 70s throughout the world, social revolutionaries and all this. And, it made a lot of sense. But it was also a good preparation because at that time, Papua New Guinea, we wanted independence, but what independence was going to be all about in reality. So some of us tried to explore it by writing. Some of us tried to explore it by experimenting. I had the advantage of being one of the early generation that's part of the chieftainship system here on the island, plus fairly well educated in the Western concept. And I saw every possibilities with independence coming in. The Trobriand Islands, we could still utilize the system, but modernize. Yeah. Because at that time, and that was an experiment, of course, the rest of the country was not ready. We declared independence in 1973. Trobriand Islands, chiefs and everything. We declared our independence before Papua New Guinea. At the moment, 60s, 70s, Trobriand Island people are homogeneous, one group of people. Now it's impossible.
Okay, so more autonomy now.
Some of my own relatives, my sister's children are Australians. Some are now Americans.
Yes.
So even though they will come back, I myself have a Chinese wife. So that time it was good for us to be clear what we wanted in terms of value, set of values. And it was more ideas. It has to be tested with reality. And that's where the three tiers of politics and the leaders at national level like Somare and the rest of the majority of Papua New Guineans have heard about independence, but they knew that they were more autonomous, but then they're still part of Papua New Guinea. So because here we have a system of sharing feasts, garden work, even families. The chieftain system, when we marry a wife, we don't marry just a woman, we marry into a clan, connected clan. And so it carries obligations. Of course, on a personal basis, there is still that personal between wife and husband and children as a unit. But it's already, you walk into an extended system already that can have many generations background to it. So sometimes it's very frustrating because it's demanding, but it's also very enriching because every day you are given these opportunities to be part of contributing towards a much bigger family than your individual. And in some ways now, with increased population, our generation of young men now, Papua New Guineans, they are no longer just Papua New Guineans, even though they fly the flag and all of this. They're already related to Americans, Polish, English, and that's the beauty about the dynamics of independence. After 76, I then became more focused on self-discovery and self-articulation. So I write folk operas, poetry, and literature. So literature as well as traditional technology in gardening, which you cannot write about. You can only experiment with problem of introducing new crops and feeding the people. So after 76, 70, the ideas, we noticed that it's not necessary to own socialist ideas because it's already transmitted and it's out of the 1,000 cultures in Papua New Guinea. We have a tremendous potential of a great, rich diversity, but we still haven't realized that we can. But as a nation, it's shaping, it's forcing that to take place. So I'm very hopeful that after the 2022 election, next 5 years is a great period for social experimentation. Papua New Guinea is very, very fortunate. Its cultural milieu is a socialist.
So the background,
Natural
cultural background is socialist.
Is socialism. In the village, the unit, the clan, the family is definitely socialist. Anybody try to be beyond that or individual, you soon find yourself ostracized and you are left out. So the richness of Papua New Guinea diversity is based on socialism. Socialism that's by marriage, by clan, by history, and in particular for Milne, we have another formal system overriding trade called Kula,
Yes,
which
Kula
connects
trade.
Yeah, which connects again, even though you judge it by exchange of different articles, but underneath is every generation you're confronted with relatives that you inherit as if where they turn up and they said, look, your father is my Kula partner and we're family. Thank you. Come in, brother.
Yeah.
So in many ways, we are very fortunate. Of course, how to manage that background to make it productive for each one. That's what the country is going through. At that time, I would say I was very, very fortunate to be the only educated. And now there's a lot of Papua New Guineans that are also same part of the chieftainship that still had I became the mouthpiece. And because I liked and understood what the chiefs were saying, I was able to exercise not only initiative, but also responsibility, translating what the chiefs were saying, what they wanted, and what they were hoping to get to negotiate. Unfortunately, we didn't have the negotiating capacity at that time. We were too busy just being able to reorganize our own people. So it was a very, very exciting. And I believe in many ways that same experience will be revisited again, but it may be,
in the future, in the next generation.
That's correct. Yes. In papers, I've published some ideas on papers, but not so much, like a book. Much of it, I put it in poetry.
Okay.
Mainly, I write in English, but I use symbolic stories, combine epic stories, putting them together, but underneath that's poem. But the stories is based on Trobriand Island epic story. But I use this as to explain where Papua New Guinea and where we are hoping. Then I worked with musicians, stage, so they've converted into folk operas that are able to be performed. As you know, sometimes poetry is a very lonely. Only very few people read poetry, but then when reaching other people, especially when I write in English and my audience are basically Papua New Guinea, it's a big problem. I enjoy personally writing, and it's easier to, I'm comfortable in expressing myself in English. But my audience are Papua New Guinean who speak Pidgin mostly, if not their own particular 1,000 languages. I think we have a fantastic prime minister now who is both a visionary, but being an engineer. He's managed to come up with a slogan that really is quite exciting to everybody. And that is taking back PNG, and PNG becoming the richest Black Christian nation in the world. This is the slogan of current Prime Minister. And even though that is a slogan, but it's focusing everybody, because Christianity has already taken roots, whether we like it, be it Catholic, United Church, but throughout Papua New Guinea, everybody nominally accepts that we are a Christian country and pay respects and participate in all forms of Christian. But underneath all of that is still the milieu of the traditional socialist.
And is Christianity socialist also?
Of course.
Yes. Jesus was a revolutionist.
He was a communist.
The communist. Yes. Yes, very interesting. Very interesting, sir.
But it's a revolutionary socialist. And he really knew how to tap the spiritual energy of mankind. And this is where now I find exciting. Even I'm revisiting and rereading the Bible every day. And, there's a lot that I find that in my haste to acquire Western education very quickly up to university level, now I have to go back and revisit the footprints and try to see where the toe is and where we have a fantastic opportunity of utilizing the best modern technology that's developed based on management of, we are so rich. The fact of the matter is, as a country, minerals, we are so rich that we just take for granted. What we have yet to know, to get the confidence of how to create industries based on what we have, but produce things that other people and other countries need.
Yeah.
Agriculture, for instance.
So modern socialism.
Of course.
Modern socialism.
Of course. And I'm very hopeful. Sometimes it's you have to be, I guess, have a few gray hairs to begin to see things that sometimes it takes time. But when I was a young man, I thought you can do this by making proclamations and doing things in a hurry But when you're dealing with people, to really establish uh, a truth that can be passed on to the next generation, it takes patience and the human contact. At that time, I was enemy number one for Somalia,
Okay.
because Somalia was trying to form um, the country of Papua New Guinea, and so automatically we were branded as cargo cultists, number one, so that we had to explain that we were not cargo cultists. So we had internal that forced us to have to redefine and explain to our people. But most important, politically, Somalia made sure that we did not succeed. He could not take us on directly even though we had confrontation with the police. But very quickly, we negotiated a settlement and he withdrew. But he was smart enough to know that he can kill us by starving us without any financial help. This was one of the problems we had with the early leaders of independence like Somalia. Now, when I look back, yes, I understand it was necessary to hold the country together, and it's not good for individual 1,000 cultures all to. But in the end, the Constitution, we were allowed to contribute, and to this day, I believe, we still have a very, very good Constitution that allows for, and that's where the opportunity comes in. I believe as each group, in example, Trobriand Islands, next generation, when they so feel autonomy, it's already in the Constitution, and they can. And Bougainville is even though many people see it as a difference but no, Bougainville independence fits in perfectly within the Constitution that's provided there. So we all watch for Bougainville get their independence. Definitely, Kiriwina will revisit, and we don't have to fight because we have a legal precedent, constitutional precedent. And this was when people actually agree and you mobilize and you work with their spirit, truly you can achieve many, many things. And I'm hopeful. My brother Papua New Guineans, fellow Papua New Guineans can share that or disagree with me, but I'm excited. We must give Bougainville their independence. But that does not mean that they are going to leave Papua New Guinea, because the Constitution will provide. And there's a lot of autonomy. To begin with, 1,000 cultures in Papua New Guinea. Those cultures, to me, are traditional nations with a set, and they can all contribute. And now with acquiring education, it can still be done. So that's my last statement on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.